All right. So I hope you can hear me all right. Okay. Um, okay, this is better like this. And if you can let me know that you hear any comment, anything, I can see there's a few online. And I will just wait a few minutes and then we'll start. I hope you can hear me okay. All right. So today, thought it would be nice to do a lesson on triads, and we are gonna talk about that. And before we do, don't forget everything. And so yeah, let's check out the lesson plan for today. And we're gonna basically talk about triads, what they are, what you do with them, where you can find them on the neck, how to play them, and some basic uses and a little bit more advanced ones. And so we're going to start off by talking about the purpose, and then water triads, a little bit about inversions, and then block versus linear triads. We're going to break that down, and then I'm going to show you a whole map on the neck of the major triads, and then we're going to divide the neck into four sets: the high sets, two middle, and one low. And we're gonna do we're gonna break those up for the major triads. We're also gonna discuss how to practice this and how to get it under your fingers, etc. And obviously some sort of application to it. And then there's gonna be a little bit of Q&A. You can always through the broadcast you can ask me anything if something is not clear or just any question you have. And if we'll have time, that obviously we'll see how it goes. But if we'll have enough time, then I will discuss and show you the map for the minor, diminished, and augmented triads on the neck. Um, so I guess we can start a little bit by talking about the purpose of triads. Okay. So the purpose of triad is to basically uh, get us more tools in our in our bag, both for guitar parts that we play, for improvisations, and just to get a very deep familiarity with the neck. It's a very important tool that I think every guitar player should learn. It's probably one of the most important things, at least for me, that I have learned. And the beauty of Triad is that it's very flexible, the things you can do with it. Um, in terms of harmony, if you take Triad and change the bass, if you superimpose the Triad on a certain sound, in terms of improvisations, just knowing them and knowing what to do with them, it's a very important tool. And you can expand the triads into seventh chord harmony with just a movement of one note. So it's very useful. And yeah, we'll get into all of that stuff. So let's start by explaining what is a triad? So a triad is basically the smallest form of harmony in terms of chords, of functional chords in Western harmony. And without getting too much into deep into theory, if you look at the major scale, right? If you look at the major scale of let's take a C major for example. Okay, I hope you can hear me well. We can name the notes. We can give them names. So this would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7th. Obviously, we're talking about the major 7th, not the flat 7th. Now, if I look at that scale and I take the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note, those notes together will give me the basic major triad. So for triad to be, basically, we need 3 notes, but it's not only 3 notes, we need a certain relationship between those notes. And that relationship basically is, if you have the 1 as your root, then you have a 3rd and then a 5th above the root. You can also look at it as 2/3 stacked. And obviously the thirds can be either minor or major. And as if you look at it from the root to the 5th, you can also change the 5th and get different chords. So what I have on the screen right there is your basic formula for the 4 families that we have in the Triad family. So we have the major, the minor, the augmented, and the diminished. Now, this is basically the basics of every harmony. Everything we learn about harmony. So what you want to get used to is, first of all, obviously learn those numbers, but also understand the meaning of them. For example, if I'm looking at the major and I'm saying a 1, 3, 5, then basically what I'm doing is I'm portraying the distances, if you will, between the notes. So that's the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, right? The intervals. So in case of the major, we have a major 3rd, and then if you look at the 5 from the root, it's a pure 5. Okay, it's a perfect 5th. If we look at the minor, we have a root, a minor 3rd, and a perfect 5th again. The augmented is the same as the major, but the 5th is raised by a half step. So a sharp 5 there. And then you have the diminished, which is the same as the minor, but with a flattened 5. So you get a diminished 5th there. So that's the formula for your basic triad comprehension, basic triad chords. Hello, C to G. Good to have you here. Just going to fix something with my sound. 1 second so I can hear myself better. And also a good time to tune. So if you just join us, we're talking about triads today. And the importance of triads, and especially in guitar, to create interesting guitar parts, improvisations, and just general understanding of harmony and the way the neck works. Okay, so that's that, and let's move on. So now that we know the basics of triads, so we have the 1, the 3, and the 5, what I've done here is I'm showing a picture of the notes. And now, if you don't know this, you can look at the bottom one. Basically, I listed it. It's the root. There's your 3rd and the 5th. Okay, that's just the notes on the clef right there. So we have a C, an E, and a G. Now, when the C is in the bass, we call that the root position, right? So whenever you have a C chord like that with the C in the bass, that's the root position. Now, if we are looking at the first inversion, What it means basically is that the root, as you can see in the diagram, is moved up an octave, and then we have the third in the bass. So any C chord that you play with the third in the bass, with the E note, would be considered the first inversion. And then we have a second inversion, and then you can see that the fifth is now in the bass. So to get a quick understanding of what inversions are, besides the technical part on the guitar that we can play inversions and get different shapes, which we'll get into in a bit. Besides that, you have to know one thing, that the inversion is determined by the note that's in the bass. Okay, that's very important. So if I'm playing, even if I'm playing this, right? Let's say I'm playing the root, the third, and the fifth. And as long as the bass, let's say there's a bass player, he's playing also the root and the bass, or I'm playing a bass or whatever, and that would be considered a root position. But if the bass player, for example, plays the fifth in the bass, then that would be considered a second inversion. Okay, so it's always determined by the note in the bass. But for our main purpose now, because we don't have a bass player, and we'll divide these up into small sections and groups and cells, basically, we'll look at this as inversion, but mostly for practical reasons, we'll look at it as shapes that we can use to our advantage, and the important thing for us will be the root, because the inversions in this case are not so much important, but it's good to understand it theory-wise. Okay, so unless you have any questions, we can proceed. And let's look at the big map, okay, right now. So what I've done here is I've taken the entire neck of the guitar, okay, up to the 14th fret from the 0th fret, and I've basically drawn the notes that are relevant to the C major triad. Now you can see the 1 is the root, there's your 3, which is the third, obviously, and then the 5, which is the fifth. Now this is like a shot from above that we look up on the whole neck, right? And we are going to break it down in a few moments. But eventually, this is what you'll need to grasp and understand on the guitar. And the cool thing about it is that once you are familiar with the notes on the neck, like where's your C, where's your F, you know, your G, A, etc., on every string, then these become real easy and understandable on the neck. It's very once you know the notes, it's very easy to learn the shapes. And I will also show you a way to memorize them. Now, just a quick note before we move on. Another way to see triads on the neck, if you take the major scale along one string, for example, like if I'm in C major on the second string, right here, and I'm moving up the scale, right? And then I will do the same from the E string, but instead of starting on the C, like that, I will start from the lowest note I have, which is an E. Alright? And that's the same notes as the C major scale, just starting from an E. And I'll do the same with the G string. Okay? And if you take those notes and you build thirds, if you stack the chords, you will basically get the triads of the major scale. For instance, this is a C on the third string, and here's your E on the second string, and here's your G on the first string. So that's your 1, 3, 5, right? Now if I move up the scale with each note, so I'm moving the third string a whole step, I move in the second string a half step because I'm going from E to F. And then I move in the first string from G to A. That's the next note. So I'm getting the next chord in the scale. That's the second degree. So this was the first, and there's your second. And basically this is a major triad and then a minor triad. Okay, and that's an easy way to understand it and to also build the scales from each inversion that you can do. It's a very nice exercise to do as well. So again, we're taking the note on the third string and then moving up to the next note in the scale, and then the note on the second string moving to the F to the next note in the scale, and then the G to the A, which is the next note in the scale, and you get this shape. Now from this shape you can do the same. The next note from the D will be the E, right? The next note from the F will be the G. And then the next note from the A on the first string, okay, will be the B. So if I move it as a shape, I'm getting this E minor triad. Okay, that's the third degree. So we have this, and you can do it with the rest of the scale, and that's how you will get the chords of the major scale. Now we've done it from the basically the root position, but you can also do it from any inversion. So just to demonstrate, if I have, for example, this is the first inversion of a C. Okay, the root is on top here, and the third is on the lowest note. So if I move each note to the next corresponding note on the scale, I will get this D minor right here. And if I will do the same for the D minor, I'll get this E minor. Okay, so that's how you can build from each inversion the chords of the scale. So it's very important, and it's a good exercise to do it on any scale with like the minor scale, the major scale, and you can get the chords with the corresponding degrees. So now what I want to do is I want to break it down, and I want to show you the major triads on the first set of strings. Now, when I refer to a set of strings, I'm thinking about the G string, the B string, and the E string. Okay, so that's my first set. Now, if I bring up the diagram, okay, here we go. So what you're looking at now is basically just the first set of the major triads. Now, the left part, the grayed out, is obviously the what's marked as 0. Okay, that will be, for example, a G, a C, and an E. So this by itself, that's your C triad. Now, what's important to know here is that you have to know this note, the root, which is the C, okay, and how to build this shape around it. Okay, you have to think about it as an individual shape. Okay, each of these shapes you have to know the root and then how to build the shape around that root. It's very, very important for advancing with this. So again, this is the first shape we get there, and here is the root. Now, if you want to think about inversion, because we have the fifth in the lowest note, this will be a second inversion. Okay. Now, if I move this up to the next position, I have the root, the third, and the fifth. Right. So this position right here. Again, I see the root on the third string, and I build my chord from that root. That's how I want to see it. So there. And then if I move it up to the next step, there's my C, right? And there's my shape right there. On the 9th fret on the third string, you can see the E note, and then the G afterwards on the second string, and then your C. So there's your triad. And then we move up to the next position, which is basically an octave from the first one we did below. So I'll move it up, and I'm getting this shape. So this is like your basic D chord, right? Everybody knows this D chord. But if you take it apart and just look at the shape itself, you can move it around, of course. This is your D, this is your F, this is your G, your A, your B, and here's our C that we just did. Now, just to demonstrate something about the power of triads, let me show you, for example, a phrase, okay? So if I would be playing, let's take something just like a C7th type of chord, like a C9th. Okay, like that. Now, I know that I have my triads, the blocks that I just showed you, right? So obviously they will correspond with this chord, because the 7-9 chord, the dominant that we're playing now, is inside it. It has the 1, the 3, and the 5. All those notes are okay against these chords. Even if I'm not playing the 5th, it doesn't matter, because the chord will accept it fine. It's no problem. So I can use these shapes to build, craft, or write, whatever, to improvise, for example, a solo that relates to this chord. All right. So if I want to get just the basic sound of the chord, and I'm not talking about the 7th or the 9th right now, just the core, whether it is major, diminished, minor, or augmented. So this in the core would be a major, right? So your shapes can help you get some basic melodies. Now, in a later stage, you can see all the notes around those shapes, and you can construct phrases which are very much related to the chord. Because if I see this shape, I can already see all the notes around it. I can see the flat 7 is right here. Okay, this is your C, there's my flat 7. There's my flat 7 again here. Right, so there's a small arpeggio for you. Now, this is all coming from this shape. I'm not thinking about scales. I'm not thinking about modes, etc. You know, just thinking harmony, pure harmony of intervals. So my first root, my third, my fifth. There's my flat 7 right there, and all from that shape. Now, if I would move chromatically, for example, from the 5th to the flat 7, I would get a phrase which is built around the core of the chord, because I'm using the chord tones mainly. So there you go. That's a phrase which we're not going to discuss about those more advanced things, but just to show you where does this go. So it's a phrase built around that shape, and you can do this with every shape on the neck. So that's a triad right here. You're going to see it in a second. So again, that shape and that phrase connects together, and I don't have to think about modes or anything right now. I'm just thinking about pure harmony against this chord. So that's the use of these in improvisations. They're very well connected to the harmony that you play. So you really have to know them good. Now, let's move on to the second set. So we had the first set, and now let's look at the second set. So the first shape I'm doing, you can see the fifth, that it's the open string, the G, the open G right there. So in essence, it will be like playing this shape or moving it up an octave. It's this shape right here. So that's the core shape of it. And then move it up the fretboard, I get this shape. There's my root, third, and fifth. So I want to see my root and then build the chord from that, either by a bar or like this, whichever is comfortable to you. And then next C, and there's my shape right there. This is all out of the triad, okay? So I'm thinking about this triad in relation to whatever I'm playing. So there's my shapes, right? And if you look at the roots, then from each root I've built the chord, right? And there's your shapes. Okay, that was the second set. Let's look at the third set. So the third set begins here. It's a basic C shape, right? But I'm only playing the 3 notes. And then I move it up to the next C root, which is here, to play this shape. Okay? So there's my third in the bass, fifth in the root. So this will be the first inversion. And there's this shape. Okay? There's my root right here. And there's my G and E. Fifth in the bass, so that will make it a second inversion. And then an octave to where we start would be this. And again, if I'm thinking about this again, C7 for example, then a shape like this, that will be like a phrase I can play straight out of that shape. If you look at this shape, there's your sound right there. Everything out of that small cell of triad. So it's a very simple thing to learn, but it is extremely powerful because it doesn't demand complex understanding. It's very intuitive. It's very under the fingers. Okay. Now, if we go back to our, if we move forward to the fourth set, okay, right there. So there's my shape right here. Okay, and again, if I know my chords or the notes of the chords, the interval, and again, just intervals, I'm not thinking about scales or modes or anything right now. If I know that this is my seventh, flat seventh right here, for example, I can just make a phrase leading up and from that note. And everything is built around this shape. Okay? So there's my root, third, and fifth right over there. And then I move up to my next C right here. There's my shape. The first, okay, the root, the third, and the fifth. Now again, for example, if I would be playing so you have all these shapes and you can play something that is more connected to the harmony, which is what we're talking about eventually when you are referring to improvisations and to making guitar parts, because just playing scales is not enough. It can work sometimes, but it's not going to target you to the areas where you want to, you want those chord tones, you want those leading lines from the chord tones chromatically to another chord tones, etc. And these shapes will get you there in the most easiest way. And you don't have to play a whole bunch of a long arpeggio to do it, because music doesn't sound like that, right? Music doesn't sound, if you learn a big shape of arpeggio, I don't know, whatever, you do something like that, music doesn't sound like that. Music is about phrases, melodies, sentences, motifs, etc. And by learning these very small shapes and notes around them and making phrases with them, you will be much more melodic. All right? And you will obviously be able to create longer lines once you know them all, with connecting them. So this shape, we stopped here, and then I move it up to my next C, which is here on the fourth set, there's my shape right there. Okay, so the third now is in the bass, there's my fifth, and there's my root. So this will be your second inversion if you want. Okay, now there's our shapes like that, and up to the octave. Sorry, there's your octave right there. Now when you learn these, okay, when you learn these, it's important, like I said before, to know where the root is and build the chord from that root. So let me give you some exercises which you can do, and I'm going to show you the exercise on the first set, and you can do this on each set, okay? And it's basically 5 different exercises where the first 4 are pretty much the same. There are just different inversions. And then the last one, which is the 5th exercise, that one incorporates all of the knowledge and the things we've done so far. So if I'm looking at my first set, right? So there's my C right there. Okay, that's my C right there. So if I'm thinking about, there's my root and there's my position, okay, there's my shape, if you will, then what I want to do, I want to bring up a circle, a 5th right now, right there, okay? And what I would do is I would place a metronome, okay? It's not about speed here, it's about recognizing the note and being able to do it without moving the hand and stuff like that. It has to be very built into your system. So if I'm playing the C, okay, let's go to the right side. Let's do the G. So I'll be looking for the G, and I can see it already, the G here, the same shape. I'm staying in the same shape, the same inversion. There's my G, okay? Then I'm going to the D. So I'm looking at the fretboard, and I'm thinking, okay, where's my D? There it is. Don't move your hand unless you know where it goes to. Don't do this. Don't search. You want to go from one to the other. Boom, straight like that. No searching, okay? So there's my C, and there's my G. I'm going right in 5th. And there's going back, okay, to the D, forward to the D, sorry. So there's my D, and I'm building the chord. From there I will go to the A. So here's my A, I'm building the chord, okay? Going to the E. Here's my E, I'm building the chord, okay? So I'm thinking about the root and the chord. Now, once you familiarize yourself with this, you want to place a metronome, and you want to do it consistently. So if I would be thinking about time, I would say something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 beats per chord, okay? So I would be doing you can do the A here, you can do the E here, and there's your B, okay, and so on and so forth. And that's just the one position. So the key here is to know the notes on the fretboard. For this set, it's the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. So you want to look at the fretboard, you want to see the note, you want to know it, and then make the shape from that note. Now, if I do it on the first inversion, so here's my note, here's my C. Okay, so we went right, let's go left. Instead of going in 5ths, let's go in 4ths. That will be going left. Okay, so there's my C, there's my F right there, there's my B flat right there, there's my E flat right there, A flat, okay, D flat right there. And again, also you want to do this exercise like before. So there's my C to F with a B flat, E flat, okay, with a metronome. So now you've done the root and the first inversion, do it on the second inversion. So here's my, okay, you can do it here or here, doesn't matter. First set, root is in the middle, and here's my shape. Move it to an F, then to a B flat, okay, then to an E flat, and to an A flat, and so on and so forth. Now, this method you do across the neck on all the sets. So next up would be the second set. So there's my C. So there's my C, F, B flat, and so on and so forth. If I'm on the third set, so there's my C, there's my F, B flat, E flat. And you go on like that. Now there's a good reason to do it, because it will familiarize yourself with the neck. And once you know it by heart, improvisation will open up for you in a much more clear way, which we'll discuss, not today, but in a different episode. So to continue this, you want to go to the next exercise. The next exercise will be taking all those inversions, basically, and using them together, okay? Going from one to the other. Now, what I like to do, and this is not set in stone, you can change it, as long as it's effective, but a good exercise that I like to do is go to the lowest position I can play it on the neck. So if I'm on C, for example, this would be the lowest position on the first set that I can play it on the neck. And then I would move it up all inversions at least to an octave and bring it down. So I have to think about the roots. So here's my C, here's another C, here's another C right there, and here's another C. So it will look like this. And then back. And next, I would go left for a fourth interval, right? Sometimes referred to as the circle of fourth. If you go left, if you go right, it's the fifth. And where's the F, right? So I want to find the closest F to this shape, and there it is, right here. So this is the shape, and then I would go up the neck. Okay, where's my B flat, which is next? So here's my B flat, right there. And there's my triads. Next up is the E flat, right? So it's over here. Now, where's the chords? So up the neck, to the octave, and down. So you get the idea, right? If you don't, please write to me, and I will explain it again and show it in the comments, of course. Now, what you've done is you've familiarized yourself with the root shape, the first inversion, the second inversion, and you're doing an exercise to go through all those together from one set. This is just one set and one type of chord. This is just the major chord, right? The major triad. Obviously, as you get more into it and you know your notes and you know the major chord on all the sets, what you can do, hello to Russia, what you can do is start changing to the minor, diminished, and augmented, and we'll get to that a little bit later. What I want to show you now is another exercise. Okay, so this is the sixth exercise. Now, we've done it across the neck like that with all the inversions. The next exercise, what you do is you take any one of the inversions that you want on the first set. And again, you can do this on any set, it doesn't matter. Now, I would be going the circle of fifth or fourth, it doesn't matter. But instead of going up all inversions, I would be doing the exercise in the same place pretty much. Not accurately the same place because it's impossible, but near this area. So I want to find all the chords. So there's my C right there, and there's my F right there. Okay, now I have a B flat next. Now I have two options. I can go down here, okay, or I can take this B flat right here. Depends if I want to go up or down. It's your choice. So there's my C, F, there's my B flat, okay, there's my E flat, and there's my A flat, there's my D flat right there, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, and C again. Now, you can do this, and because you started in the root position, then go to the next inversions, do it here. So there's my C right there, there's my F, B flat right there, okay? And so on and so forth. Now, think about this. If this was like a standard or chord changes or even the blues or anything, you could play phrases that are related to the harmony right there without moving. So if this would be a blues in C, for example, so there's my first degree, right? There's also my flat 7 here and here. So just with those tools, I can play a phrase. Not thinking about scales, not thinking about anything, just pure harmony. And then when it goes to the F chord, right? That's your 4th degree of the blues, that's the F7th. Then I'm thinking, okay, so where's my F? And there's my F triad. And with this F triad, I can build a phrase. Okay, and if I want to get more complex, etc. So you get the drift, you get the idea. That's the power of triads. You can evolve them with another note to a 7th chord, but still remain in this very simple cell. Okay, so we're thinking about small cells that are very accessible to us as players, and are very easy to manage and to remember and to play. Now, once you get past the first part of the major, now you can do this in groups or whatever. What I mean by groups is that you can take a first set and do all the 4 chord families. Okay? So if I would be playing, let me just turn this off. If I would be playing, for instance, the minor, so let's have a look at the minor map of us that we have. So if you look at this shape that we had earlier, okay, let's take it off for now, and I want to show you something that's easier. If this is my shape, this is my root, 3rd, and 5th. Remember we talked about in the beginning about this, okay? So if I want to go for a minor, this is my 3rd, I have to make it flat 3rd, and there's my triad. If I go to the next shape, remember the major, if I want to make it a minor, there's my 3rd, I have to flatten the 3rd, okay? Go to the 2nd inversion there. Where's my 3rd? Right here, I have to flatten it. And there's your minor triad. And there you have it. Now again, the most important thing is to see the root, play the chord. See the root, play the chord. See it, play the root, and play the chord. Now, if I was to play the diminished, right? So the diminished would be a 1, a flat 3rd, and a flat 5th. So there's my 1, there's my 3, there's my 5. So a flat 3rd would be an E flat right there, and a flat 5 would be this G flat. There's your diminished shape, okay? Now, back to the inversion we did before. So there's my 1, 5, and 3, okay? Now I need the 3 half step down to get a flat 3rd, the 5 also, and there's your next. So we have this, okay? Now if I play it on up here, I need the 3rd half step down and the 5th half step down, okay? Now you might say, well, what am I going to do with a diminished sound and chord or notes in my phrases, right? You're probably asking yourself. So let's take a G7, for example. Okay. Now a G7th, if you look at the chords notes, for example, so I'm thinking root, third, fifth, and flat 7. That's my G7th. Now, you can look at it like that, and there's another way to look at it. If you look at the triad, the bass triad is a major triad. Every 7th chord, the basic triad, is a major triad. Every 7th, I mean a dominant, right? So the major chord is a triad. Now, if I wanted to make this into a 7th chord, I would have to add the flat 7, which is an F, right there. Okay? So, there's my 7th chord. Now, if you look at this closely, this particular shape, you will see that I have the triad right there. Okay, there's my triad, there's my root, third, and fifth. Now, if I continue this and I look at the second part of the chord, remember this is the main chord, and I look at this part, this is a major triad, a G major triad. But now lift my finger and just look at this part. This is actually a diminished triad that we just did. Okay? So you can think about this G dominant 7th, the flat 7, right? You can think about it as two separate triads. You can think about it as a G with a B diminished. Okay? So in every chord like that, okay, in every chord like that, you have a major triad and a diminished triad. So for instance, if I was thinking about this C, okay, this C chord right here. So there would be the major triad, and there's a diminished. That's when we break down the chord into two triads. So if you want to conclude something from this, you can say that every 7th chord, whether it's a minor 7th, a major 7th, a minor 7 flat 5, every, from the 7th family chord, you can break it down into two different triads. Let's look at the major 7, for example. So if this is my G major 7, okay, right here. So this G major 7, I can break it down into a G triad and a B minor. So if you connect B minor to a G, you would get a G major 7. Okay? So, again, you can look at theory in very different angle every time. So this is just another tool to use in the arsenal. So back to the minor triads. Now we'll bring up the map, and you can basically see that it's the same shapes as the major, but with a flattened third. Okay, so there you have it. That's your minor, and you can do the same exercises as before, and every set like that. Okay. Now, if you think about this, the method is the same. It's exactly the same as we did before. We didn't change anything. That's the beauty of working methodically with this, is that you don't have to learn anything new. You already learned the method doing it on the major, so now you can transpose it and do it in the minor. Okay? Let's have a look at the diminished. So we had this. Okay? So the diminished map is right there. Okay? And you can see all the shapes. Okay? All the shapes are there. Okay? Now, everything is connected in some way. Now, what I mean by that? Let's go back to the beginning of the lesson where we talked about the harmony of the major scale. Okay? If you do the exercise, and this can be like a 7th exercise for you, take any scale, pick any scale you want from the 12 scales. Let's bring up the circle of 5th and you can see this better. So look at the diagram there, right there, the circle of 5th. Now, take any scale. Let's take, for example, the G scale. Okay? There's 1 sharp, the F sharp. Now, I can start with the G and then move the chords, the triads, up the neck. So I would have a G, an A minor, a B minor, okay? And so on and so forth. And that will give you the whole harmony of the scale in a basic cell of a triad. And later on you could improvise using those cells in different situations. So you can build each scale with each chord and then make it into a degree, like the 1st degree, the 2nd degree, etc. And again, you can do this with any scale. There's a 1st degree, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Now notice that if you play the 7th, the method I showed you, where you take each note and you build a 3rd above it and then you move it by a step or a half step, depending on the place on the scale, you would get a diminished chord on the 7th. So in essence, what you have is the 1st degree is a major chord, the 2nd and 3rd is a minor, the 4th and 5th would be a major, the 6th a minor, and then the 7th would be a diminished. Again, these are just in triads. So you can do this exercise and build those chords up and down the neck on every set. It's a very good exercise, very powerful exercise. Doing like this. Okay? And you can go back. So that's like how to learn. What we've done so far is we've talked about what are triads, the applications, and we've talked about how to practice them separately together on each sets, etc., etc. Now, what you want to start to do with triads is you want to bring it inside to your music, whatever it is you're playing. So if we're playing blues, jazz, rock, whatever, you can start using these to obviously write guitar parts. So if you're making a song or you were thinking about, okay, what am I going to play in this song? What guitar parts am I going to play? What chords am I going to play? You can use that. If you're improvising, okay, you can use those triads. Let's say you're playing a blues. Let's take an example from the blues, okay? Now, everybody knows the minor pentatonic scale, right? Let's take an A blues, for example. So, there's my minor pentatonic. And I've added the blue note, the flat 5, right there and there. But you can play it without. Now, as long as I'm in A, okay, as long as I'm in A, I can take all the triads of A and use them as harmonical reference points to my improvisation or solo writing. Because, yeah, I can play the minor pentatonic scale, it's fine, it will sound okay on all of the chords. But if I want to get more on the chord, the sound itself, I have to start playing with the 1st, the 5th, the 3rd, eventually flat 7. Now, because you have the flat 7 and the minor pentatonic, it's easier. If you look at A, there's a flat 7 right there. So if you would be doing a phrase that's starting out for the triad, for example, I can go like this. Just that, going for the triad and then to the 7th. So that's something you can add to the arsenal. And then you can build multiple phrases, it doesn't have to be like that, and it can be something chromatic even. So I can be playing, going like that, but using the triad to get there. So if I'm improvising, I'm always aware of those triads. And the next step would be to know where the seventh is. So for this A, it would be a G, so it would be here or here. So if I'm playing a pentatonic line, that's a pure pentatonic line, right? But what about if I add something from the triad? So that's more interesting, right? It makes it more spicy and more related to the harmony, which is how you eventually want to think about improvisation. You want to target the chords and the notes that matter. So that was on the A, for example, right? So I have all these shapes that are relevant to the A. And I can use the major or minor pentatonic to bind them. I can use chromatic notes, use the shapes, it's there. Now what happens when I move a chord? So let's say we're thinking about the A blues, right? So let's go to the 4th degree. That'll be a D7th, D7th 9 I'm playing in this case. So in order to get the sound, I can use the minor pentatonic that we used before, right? I can use this scale. And it will work well against this D7, no problem. But if I want to get more to the chord, I would like the 3 especially, get this F sharp. And I already have the shapes right here because we've learned them. Okay, so I already learned them, I know them. So when I see this D, I know that the triads will work in conjunction with the flat 7th, with the 9th as a tension, with the minor pentatonic scale. You know, that will work. And then I can spice up my lines. So in essence, I'm thinking about harmony, I'm not thinking about scales. The scales are just there to get the color. For example, the minor pentatonic is just the color of the blues. But harmonically, I would be adding something from the triads and adding the 7th intentions later to get more into the harmony. So instead of playing something like that, I would be probably doing something along with this F sharp right here. Like a line like that, for example. So and that's based around this triad. Now, here's another triad. And again, this sound, and I'm thinking, okay, remember, it's a blues in A and I'm in the 4th degree, right? So there's my triad, and I play the line around it, okay? And I can go, I can move it up, right? And as you see, I improvise. I didn't even think about it. It's natural because I already know that from here, this line, I already see the next sets of triads, right? And this doesn't mean that you're not using your regular stuff. You are using your pentatonics, but you're adding different flavor now. You're adding on top of it, and what you get in return is a much more precise, spicier sound. You know, you're getting a more cool sound. It's a lot hipper. You know, it's hip. So if I'll be playing, if I'm playing this A, so yeah, I've used the pentatonics, but the triads are there. The sound of the chord is there. Okay, and when I'm going to the fourth, I'm thinking about, yeah, I have the pentatonic, but yeah, okay, I also have the triads. Now, I was asked a question before the broadcast about arpeggios. Now, arpeggios, that's fine. It's a great tool to know. You can do a lot with arpeggios, and in essence, the core of arpeggios, it's the same. It's the same notes. But an arpeggio, you will probably be playing something longer, like, I don't know. So there's a major seventh arpeggio, right? But music doesn't sound like that. It doesn't. Have you ever heard a blues B.B. King do that, or Robin Ford, or anyone, whatever? Wes Montgomery plays something like that in that context? No, because it's not music. So you want to make music from ideas, and if you have an idea that uses this and it will result in music, yeah, that's great. And there's a lot of examples of that being used. But the core foundation of all of this is that the small cells developed into bigger cells. Okay, so again, if I'm thinking about the one, and then the fourth, and of course back to the one. This is my fifth. Back to the fourth. And all those sounds are based around those triads, because I'm thinking, okay, well, there's my E, there's my D, there's my A, there's my A here, I have an A here, over there. Okay, so right there as well, there's the bass of a triad, even on that E chord. That's a triad. Right over there, that's an E triad. Okay, and it's an E triad again. And I'm connecting it with notes, either chromatic or from this or that scale. But it's mostly embellishments, because the chord tones, it's what I'm going after. That's what's, the matter most. So you can hear the sound of the chord I'm playing. There's your A again. Okay, so all of those methods and sounds eventually relate to the fact that you develop your ear, and you can use that. Okay, well, I know that chord. I heard it before, and yeah, I know there's more options now to play on this. Now, obviously, it gets more complicated, right? You can do a lot of stuff with this. This is very powerful. If you learn anything on guitar, just one thing, then it would have to be this. Because this is so powerful that you can do everything with it, even more complex tensions. If I would be playing this chord, right? So I'm thinking about this as something from the A7th family, even though there isn't a third here, but we treat it as an A7th, some sort of a dominant. So I have the flat 7th, I have the 9th, there's the 11th, and I can add the 13th right there. Okay. Now, if I break this chord down, it's a G triad over an A. That's what it is. Now, when you do this movement over an A, you're basically getting the tensions. You're getting the flat 7th, the 9th, 11th. If you want to add the 13th, you get a major 7th. And all of this G major 7 goes over an A. Or this G, if you want to stay in a triad, this G goes over an A. So in essence, while playing this G over an A, you're playing the flat 7th, the 9th, and the 11th. And there you have tensions. And it's a very modern sound. Right? So if I'm thinking about that type of sound. And again, everything is done with triads. So yeah, that's basically, this is where it's going. If you practice this and you're playing, that's where you will get. So I really advise you to practice it a lot, and you'll know when you'll need to stop practicing it, because that will be the time that you have it and you're playing, and you no longer need to practice it because it's built into your playing. Yeah, they are. It's quite remarkable. And again, when I analyzed, transcriptions I've done and players I've played, and when I'm learning this, you thinking, okay, yeah, that's that sound, that's the thing right there. So you can do a lot with it. So much you can do with it. You can enhance chords with it. You can, like we did. So just, practice it. Practice it. It's very useful in country as well. Okay, any questions that you want to ask me? That would be a good time now. And also be a good time to mention that, as you know, all this content in the channel is free. I don't charge anything for it. But there is an option to donate if you want. Any sum, anything. If you want to tip me, you want to buy me a coffee, go ahead. You can use the link. That's if you go to my YouTube page, my channel, in the About, there's at the header there's a link, or you can just use paypal.me/ASAGTR. Yeah, and subscribe, comment, likes, everything helps. And again, if you have any questions, you can ask me. You can always write to me. I will do more of these, as well as upload more videos, some live, some of course not. Okay, so we have a question from B. Schulze. Is that the name? Yeah. Um, how do I start learning chicken picking? Well, I get asked that quite a lot. Chicken picking is a very large name for a lot of techniques. It's not just one technique. It's a whole bunch of techniques, weave together. And basically, what you want to do is, if you're starting with chicken picking, you want to get your dynamics properly. So, what I mean by dynamics is you want to separate the muted notes from the ones you play and from the popping sound. So, you have what I call a finger mute. So, if I'm playing a note like that with a pick or a finger, then I would just lift my finger slightly, like that. And that would be the first thing you want to learn. So there's a note, I'm playing it regularly, and then lifting to get the mute, and still picking. So the mute is coming from the left hand right now. So you want to practice this, just that. While you do that, get used to the plucking sound. Okay, so the plucking sound, you can pluck it either with the finger, you can do it with a pick as well, just pick harder. It doesn't sound as authentic. If you use a pick, you can do hybrid picking. I do a lot of it, so I'm picking and I'm plucking with my third finger. And what you want to do is you want to combine the mutes with the plucking. So and then add some vibrato to it. So stuff like that, just get that under your fingers first, both left and right hand. And the other thing that's involved is the hammer-ons and the pull-off. They are quite different. Like, everybody knows those types of Satriani and etc. Hammer-ons, which are okay. They're fine for that style, but for country it doesn't work. The pull-offs and the hammer-ons are very much different. Okay, so by that I mean that you have to be able to pull off and hammer on dynamically and control the volume to the point where it's the same exactly as what you've picked. So if I'm pulling off from this E to the D, and I'm also plucking to get that, that chicken picking sound. Same with the hammer-on. You want to get that under your fingers. So those are the basics, And then there's obviously the double stops. All those, all those types of playing. And you want to combine that with all the stuff that I mentioned earlier, but you want to get that and your fingers, pretty tight. So to practice it, you will probably, do some double stops. So let's take this simple thing, right? So I'm doing. And what I'm doing is, as I pluck both strings with my finger, I bend it a little, just a little bit. It's not even a semitone. It's like somewhere between a 0 to quarter, and you want to be able to mute it completely just with the left hand. Now, combine that with something like. So the first double stops, I'm not bending, but the second one, so that's a very familiar sound, right? And just to get, the techniques under your fingers, you can do this as an exercise without the bends, just a double stops. So there you go. Then, you can advance it, but I think that's the basics. Just get the dynamics, the muted notes, the plucked notes, those hammer-ons and pull-off the bends, and just take lines and try to get them to sound like that. And that would really help your playing. So instead of playing something the way you used to, try to get it to sound more country. So use that would not be country, but this. That's better, right? So those bends again. So they're not full bends. I'm not going to the major third there. I'm just below it. So it's like blues bends sometimes, which are not completely realized to their relevant half step or full step or whatever. So those are all little things that involve getting the technique of chicken picking. You want to get that pop sound. So it's you have to start somewhere. It gets very complex, but all that that sound that you get. So yeah, sure. If you have any more questions, I'll answer them. Go ahead. strings. That's a good question. I can actually show you. 1 second. So I like these. Okay. So these are tens, and I usually like to use the paradigm. You know, it's the same string, but it's more elastic, long lasting, and they're really nice. But right now I couldn't get them, so I got the regular Slinky, and which are great strings. Let's see if I got something here to play. Maybe this. So yeah, for the strings, I'm using tens, 0 tens. I really like the paradigm from Ernie Ball. They're great strings, really good. My favorite. And I also like there used to be, what's it called? The Dario, the NYXL, the tens as well. I think they're also very nice. Let's play a jazz blues or blues, whatever. Let's see what comes out. Uh, Maybe a lesson covering Eric Johnson cascading scales pattern. Yeah, maybe. Sure. Yeah. It's it's a complex subject, but sure, fun as hell. So, if you guys don't have any questions, I will wrap it up. It's been a long broadcast. It's been fun. Thanks for watching. Remember to please. I will see you next broadcast, and thanks for being here.